If you're tired of the propaganda, listen to us. The Politically Conscious Podcast is going live for a powerful two-day event. Day 1, 7 p.m., Thursday, March 19th, at the Gym Event Center. We're building a real black agenda. No slogans, no political theater, just strategy. What do we want and how do we win it? Day 2, 7 p.m., Friday, March 20th, at Urban Grind. We ask the question everybody's thinking: does my black vote matter? Are we getting results or just participation? 2 nights, 2 locations, 1 mission: power and accountability. Donation-based entries, free parking available. Search Politically Conscious on eventbrite.com for tickets. Details at mentaldialogue.com. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, good stuff. Now, good stuff. Welcome to episode 64 of Politically Conscious. We try to do this thing every week. I had to put together some things to get us together today. So thank you for being here with me as always. And we're going to make this a quick hit today because there's a lot happening as always, right?
Always.
Like we were just talking about this a couple weeks ago. It seems like this particular time seems more than ever.
It's an acceleration of so many things happening at once. So I'm ready to jump in, man, because there's a lot.
No, absolutely.
It's our last show.
No, absolutely. And so, Iran has been struck. And so for anybody out there that watches us, we basically react to various political clips, and we try to bring you a perspective from the left and right. But unfortunately, our brothers on the right were too busy to be with us today. But I am excited about today's show because, again, we typically don't like to do the show without our full, as I say, our full bird. I moderate from the middle. Emil sits on the left, and Brother Leo or Brother Shelley will sit on the right. And so, again, it's not how we like to do shows, but this one I felt like we could absolutely handle because I feel like geopolitics is an area that I feel like you're an expert in. I don't know if you feel that way yourself, Bill, but I don't think I could learn from geopolitics from anyone other than yourself and another brother we were on with some years ago on Blog Talk Radio who's passed now. Y'all really put me on game on geopolitics, and this situation with Iran is, I think, a lot more than what people might think it is, and we have MAGA upset, as we can clearly see. But I thought here's a place I wanted to start. Now, this is where it does hurt to miss our brothers on the right, because I'm about to show, instead of playing a clip, I'm going to show something here that you, and if I remember, I think you and Shelley may have argued about this, but I think it's a good way to set up when I say we're going to explain what was happening in Iran, maybe from a different way than what you're hearing in mass media. And we're not saying they have everything wrong. You're going to walk away from this show, again, thanks to Emil's brilliance, a little more informed on what's actually happening in Iran. Now, he hasn't seen these clips, just so y'all know. So what y'all about to witness is the strength of an intelligent brother who knows politics, and he don't even know what I'm about to show him. But everybody's about to witness this. I really want to prop you up, brother, because you are built for this show. So with that said, here's a banner I want to show you, and it'll ring a bell as soon as you see it, because this is a great place to start for anybody out there watching. We're not necessarily on the left or right. Emil represents the left for our show, so if you hear that slant, it's because he's kind of on the left. But at the end of the day, we want to weed through the propaganda and give y'all the real deal. So here's a good place to start. And tell me if you agree, Emil. This thing says, just so everyone is clear, Obama already had an Iran nuclear deal, and it was working perfectly as Iran had completely stopped its nuclear weapons program. Trump ripped it up when he came into office, choosing a policy of maximum pressure instead. So now he's launching a war in order to stop Iran's nuclear weapons program. And so you talked about this with Shelley the first time we struck Iran. And you actually brought this to our show. I didn't even know about it. So I think this is a great place to start before we get into what's actually happening now. Your thoughts, brother?
So this is so important because not only did President Obama, sign up what's called the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, that reduced almost to nil, not quite to zero, the possibility of Iran having a nuclear weapon. But what it really did was it allowed inspections, and the inspection regime was incredibly robust. It was a plan that allowed the International Energy Agency, or the International Atomic Energy Administration, to go into Iran and figure out what was going on at any given time. They had cameras, real-time cameras that were on at the same time. So when we talked about this back then, that was the basis of holding Iran to, at the very most, peaceful nuclear means. And yes, they were trying to work around it, and there was a bunch of stuff happening, but we had a regime that, had they violated it, had specific sanctions and consequences. So when we ripped that up, we opened the door for two things. One, the possibility of us doing whatever we wanted to, which is what we're seeing since it was eliminated, the agreement was eliminated. But the second thing that happened was it also gave Iran no incentive not to produce nuclear weapons. So they did what they were going to do because they were no longer under the plan of action. So there was a natural consequence to that, which, if you are looking at it provocatively, may have been one of the reasons why we attacked the first time we did several months ago. So there's so much happening in that. But the point I want to make is we had an agreement, it was working, and the Iranians were holding fast to it.
Okay, good stuff. All right, so these clips that I found, Emil, you're the expert here, so we're going to weed through these and see what's propaganda in them. What do you feel is accurate based on your knowledge base? But I thought there were kind of three various perspectives, and I figured we'll find the actual what's going on versus the propaganda. So let me start with this clip here, and we'll get your perspective on it.
The US and Israel are inseparable allies. When the threat from Tehran reached a breaking point yesterday, Operation Epic Fury was launched. Look at Iran's response. Iran didn't just sit back. They immediately targeted US bases in Bahrain, Qatar, and Kuwait. Why? Leverage. They are trying to raise the cost of this war so high that the US is forced to stop. But their biggest lever is right here, the Strait of Hormuz. Iran's message to the world is simple. If we go down, the global economy goes down with us. By blocking this 21-mile wide neck, they can choke 30% of the world's seaborne oil. Usually that's a checkmate. Usually the US would be too afraid of $300 a barrel oil to attack. But here is the catch. So why did they strike yesterday? Because of this. In January, the US launched Operation Absolute Resolve and secured Venezuela. They didn't do it for democracy. They did it to create a strategic oil backup. By bringing the world's largest oil reserves under their influence 2 months ago, Washington neutralized Iran's only weapon. The US didn't enter the Middle East war until they had secured the treasury in the West. Chanakya taught us that a wise ruler never starts a fire until they have a second well of water. Iran thinks they still have leverage. The reality? They lost this war the moment Venezuela fell in January. This is the Chanakya lab. Stay ahead of the map.
Some well thought out stuff. I'm gonna let you tell me what's accurate. I do want to highlight that I recall when we had Brother Shelley on after the Venezuela situation, I remember him distinctly saying this right here, and I may not be quoting him exactly, but it was unique, and I was again listening to exactly what he was saying. But I remember him highlighting how he understood what the president was doing in Venezuela, although he, as a MAGA fan who did not want us to go to war and have regime change, saying that personally, on that end of it, he was upset. But that particular show, he was more upset with people that he, in a sense, felt were MAGA that were okay with it just because Trump had done it. And he was just kind of like, that I'm still not okay with it from a standpoint of what he campaigned on, but from a strategic positioning and worrying about China, which is going to come into play in another clip here. He said, I understood what the President Trump was doing, but he didn't understand what us as voters and constituents, how we were just riding with our side, even when they do something different than what they say. So that was a real distinct thing. And I saw that clip and it made me think of Shelley. But go ahead, brother.
So this is like very easy for people to get confused by, and it's something that is a little technical. I don't want to get too deep in the details, but it does matter. Venezuela produces a very heavy type of crude oil. It requires a lot of refining to turn it into the products that most nations want. Iran, however, produces a much different and easier to refine type of oil. So they're not interchangeable in the sense that when you hear the word oil, there's a technical step that goes into that. Additionally, Iran's infrastructure is much more robust and much more modern than Venezuela's. Remember, Venezuela is going to need billions of dollars of investment to bring its infrastructure up to par. Iran's is already there. So it's not just that Venezuela was secured and therefore the oil for oil, dollar for dollar, barrel for barrel swap is okay. But rather, there's a lot of technical and chemical issues going on. And then when you look at the output of everything goes through the Strait of Hormuz. So in addition to the Iranian oil being choked by this war, right, because their oil is being attacked, their oil process is being attacked. So in addition to that loss, Venezuela doesn't immediately replace what was lost in that. Also, the Houthis, H-O-U-T-H-I, the Houthis who are on the coast of Yemen are backed by Iran. They're also willing to support Iran in attacking the Strait of Hormuz. So you have oil from all over the Gulf, like Kuwait and Iraq, also going through the Strait of Hormuz. So that's going to be contested. How bad is it? It's so bad that the French are sending one of their aircraft carriers to the Strait of Hormuz to secure it, to make sure that it stays open. So when he said that Iran lost the war because they lost their leverage, they didn't really, because even the French and other nations are seriously concerned. His point about bringing other nations into the fight, remember that many of the bases that struck from many of the bases that host American forces that struck Iran are in the countries that Iran reached out to. So they're not only trying to raise the cost for the partners, they're raising the cost for America, because America's already suffered several $billion worth of losses in the last several days because Iran was able to target successfully American interests in those countries. So it isn't just one thing. He made a very linear presentation, but there's so many factors that affect it, and it's going to be layered in a way that I just ask people to, when you hear all this, if it sounds like it's tidy, it never is.
Wow, good stuff. Brother Pianki says Iran has always had nuclear ambitions, saying it was seeking fuel for power generating capability. Western nations offer Iran uranium for power generation, but they wanted to produce weapon grades. Any thoughts to Brother Pianki, Emil?
Yeah, so Brother Pianki's 100% right, which is why JICPOA was so important. If you go back to the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JICPOA, President Obama asked several physicists, nuclear engineers, nuclear physicists, they made a mock-up of all of the known Iranian facilities. And they said, how do we prevent them from producing a nuclear weapon? Now, the reason why we don't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon is the same reason why we don't like North Korea having a nuclear weapon. It gives that nation leverage. They join the big boys club. You don't attack. That's why North Korea has not been attacked in the last 50, 60, 70 years, because now that they have a nuclear weapon, we don't like to attack people with nuclear weapons. So we would want to prevent Iran from having a nuclear weapon. JICPOA was the way to prevent that. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't supposed to be perfect. It was just a step in the right direction, and it was going to continue to be refined, continue to be implemented. There were going to be problems and debates, but at the end of the day, we had a solution. So Brother Pianki is 100% right. The problem is how we approached solving that problem. And I do not blame Iran for wanting nuclear weapons. I don't believe they were going to use them any more than I believe North Korea would use them. It's mutually assured destruction, but it's a lever, and Iran wanted that lever.
Yeah, and is it fair for me to at least wonder this question? Because I remember when you brought the JPOA, how you say it? Let me say JICPOA. I'm saying it correctly. JICPOA. When you brought that to the show, I remember I was like, because I didn't know anything about it. At the time, I remember you was a little fiery and upset because you was like, why did this even get done? We had something in place. I remember you, kind of at the time being real passionate about it. Is it simply ego for why it got taken away since it was working so well, in your opinion? Because it does seem like from time to time, Trump has done some things in his administration that seem to go directly against what Obama done, and because of how he acts about Obama, it seems like that ends up being the decision. And let me say this: I'm trying to be as fair as possible, because of all the things that's happening, currently in our nation and under this president. This is his geopolitics, whether people like it or not, have been his strength, whether people like it or not. Like, I get that in a sense that MAGA doesn't want wars, and I'm not saying I don't want wars either. I'm not saying that personally. However, he does seem to understand the bigger play. So I'm not saying he always gets it right. I know you hate the big hammer for everything, but it's usually not done as loosely as people may think. So I'm just wondering, getting rid of the jig pole, in your opinion, what was the impetus behind that from your perspective?
Well, the impetus was, so you've got to go back a year. So this is the first Iran strike back in, was it May of last year, something like that. It was all part of a comprehensive sort of plan process to get to the point where we could attack Iran successfully. So the first time we attacked Iran last year, the point was to cripple their ability to make a nuclear weapon. If you listen to the president back then, he said, we have completely annihilated their ability to produce a nuclear weapon. So anything that happened after that, either they were able to reconstitute that ability really quickly, which is not easy and not fast, or we didn't cripple it the way he said we did then, which means that they may have had something more than what we thought now. Funny part is, the intelligence community said, there's nothing there, boss, but he went and attacked anyway. Why is this important? Because when he ripped up Jikpoa, there was nothing there. It was working as it was supposed to. It
was effective. Yeah, you've always said it was working.
It was working as it was supposed to. So when he ripped it up, he needed a pretense to attack Iran. Not because Iran was building something, but because once you rip it up, the response from Iran is to do exactly what they were trying to do without the Jikpoa, build a nuclear weapon. So they just accelerated their process. So it was a self-created war, in my opinion, because they were already under the thumb of a system that was working. And then we take that out. They do exactly what they were intending to do without that system. They come up, boom, and now you got the problem. So you solve the problem using the very excellent hammer America has to offer. And of course, there's a ton of things I'm leaving out when it comes to Israel and all of the dynamics there. But for the most part, when he ripped up Jikpoa, which was optional, he didn't have to do that. And you ask why he did that, in my opinion, because he needed a pretense, and Iran was going to give it to him because Iran had those ambitions no matter what.
Hey, again, that's just a fair speculation from what I hear. Thank you for that speculation, if you will. All right, let's play another clip. This is another guy taking, maybe like you said, some linear approaches. Let's figure out what he's right about, or what is propaganda, if you will. Because I know the propaganda that most Americans are upset about is, I thought you completely destroyed their nuclear capability just a year ago. So what is this? They're almost back to nukes again. So that definitely, I think most Americans are not falling for that. The hook, line, and sinker, no more. You know what I mean? But here we go.
The Iranians see this as a religious war. And so the Iranians have announced total war. Okay? And so what this means is that right now, command and control in Iran is decentralized. There's no one person telling everyone what to do. Every region has its own orders, has its own strategy. And so if you knock out Tehran, everyone else keeps on going. So if you take off the head, it doesn't change anything. Okay? But unfortunately, the Israelis and Americans use this as a military doctrine. Military doctrine just means how you design your military for what purpose. And so the even though the Americans seem like an invincible army, they are not equipped to fight a 21st century war against drones, against destabilization, against religious fanatics. Okay, they're just not. All right. But unfortunately, because of military doctrine, they're going to keep on attacking Tehran. Now, the great irony of all this is that the Iranians who will be most supportive of you, of regime change, are actually in the cities because they are educated, they're progressive. The people who are most fundamentally against you, will fight you to the death, are religious fanatics, the Shia militants, living in the rural areas. Okay? So this is a really silly thing where you are actually destroying those who will most likely support you, and you're leaving alone those who are most likely to commit jihad against you.
Any thoughts? Because he kind of gets into the religious aspect and not just the political aspects. Sound to me, but again, you're the expert here.
So this is the challenge with sort of getting under the skin. Iran is many things at once, and it's hard to say which one it is today. It's not because it hasn't presented a unified front over the last several years. It has. But the real thing that makes Iran a little bit of a challenge to understand is that, as he said, the people in the cities who have been rebelling against the current government and have been crushed by that rebellion, by the way, there's reports, and it depends on who you talk to. Some of the reports say that the people who were rebelling were CIA plants and Mossad plants, and therefore they were being executed because they were working with a foreign government. Other reports say it was truly the people who were trying to revolt, but the case that he mentions that they were in the cities, that's important. That's very important to understand that they were in the cities. The rural areas is where a lot of the resistance did not happen. And therefore, when we attack the cities, where we may be harming the people most likely to help us. He was accurate there. The Iran Revolutionary Guard Corps was formulated after the revolution in 1979. This is during President Carter's administration, when they held American hostages for 444 days. That IRGC is like the core military group that protects the regime. About 150,000 troops spread all over the country, and then they have a regular army that they can help command as well. So when he talked about the dispersal of the command and control, what he's really saying is the IRGC has nodes throughout Iran that can operate independent of a central command authority. Mm-hmm. That central command authority was taken out. The Ayatollah Khamenei was killed in the initial phase of this war. So with him gone, people would say, well, who's next? Well, they killed the second guy in charge, and they may have killed the third guy in charge. So right now, it looks like the Ayatollah's son, also Khamenei, will be in charge. And they're gearing him up. They've been gearing him up to be in charge for a while, and they didn't kill him, at least so far. And so I can't remember his name, his first name, but he will probably assume leadership of Iran soon, because the council was an 88-member council that runs that. So everything he's talking about seems accurate, but I just want to make sure we understand that when we parse all this, what we're not seeing is religious fanaticism. See, I don't subscribe to religious fanaticism any more than if you were to attack Washington, D.C., and I would be mad as fire and I would be ready to go to war if someone attacked my capital. You can call that religious fanaticism because I love my country and don't want it attacked by a foreign power, or you can just say he's a loyal patriot and loves his country. See, I don't necessarily subscribe to the religious part, not because they're not like that necessarily, but because when you swat at a hornet's nest and the hornets go crazy, you can't call that religious fanaticism. They're doing exactly what they should do.
I like that. I respect that nuance. You're just being very specific and very careful of a labeling, because you know what else comes with that, or whatever that like you said, the reason for it may not be the religious fanaticism. Again, and you're even saying it doesn't mean that it's not a part of it. You just don't want to quickly label it that, considering in a sense that we attacked, and the response we're getting could, like you said, could just be simply someone saying, "Hey, we are a sovereign country, and we're not okay with you coming here and attacking us for your own geopolitical reasons." And but here it is, when you bring it to the religion, let's at least bring this up before I play the next clip. But when you bring it to this reason, it absolutely continues to look like at the behest of Israel. So that we have to at least talk about that, because that's how this looked like. One of the questions I asked in the promotions, I didn't have time to really promote this show, but one thing I labeled was, we know in a sense that Trump campaigned on not being in these forever wars, right? That was one of the big campaigns for the MAGA community specifically. They matched on and said, hey, he's going to be different. But this situation appears, this is the question that people are asking, so I'll ask it to you. This situation still appears that even the Trump administration is at the behest of Netanyahu, versus the assumption is that he would not be, because that's in a sense, and for me, this is not what I'm saying, it's not about Trump. The bigger question is Israel pulling or basically are we still their puppets, or is that something that we overstate as a country?
You're going to get people on both sides of this debate having a very tangible, evidence-based argument. And what I will say is that it looks like, and I would assume, based on what I've seen in the past, we probably accompanied Israel on something they were going to do with or without us. And so I think that is probably, our hand was forced. The reason why our hand was forced, you got to go back through and look at several years worth of data, but you'll see that Israel has been attacking Iran both overtly and covertly for the past decade or so, trying to hamstring their nuclear ambition, right? So they went on a plan and killed a bunch of their nuclear scientists. That was a brilliantly coordinated effort. They did that through a bunch of different means, including motorcycle assassinations. Like, seriously, motorcycle mounted assassins. So like, they've really done an amazing amount of work in fighting the war in against Iran. So when it came to this overt action, after all of the covert actions they'd done, they were saying, look, we just cannot wait to find out if it's true. And Netanyahu, politically, domestically, is also, under a lot of pain, a lot of pressure as well. So he's got to continue looking strong. He's got to continue doing things aggressively. So this falls in line with that. But it also means that America has to either say, we support you, or we're going to stand aside. Now, during the covert stuff, we were able to sort of, look away and say, hey, that's all Israel. But now, with something so overt as this campaign, it was hard for President Trump to say no to it, because he has another part of his base. So one part of MAGA says, no more new wars, don't do it. But there's another part of base that says, support Israel no matter what. And that part of the base is also very powerful, and he had to respond to it too.
All right, I got a question here. I'm not familiar with it, so I'll see if you are. It says, whatever happened to Nancy Guthrie? Is that ring a bell? Is that?
It is a question it is ongoing, and I'm not going to get into it. That saga is its own drama, for real.
Okay, I don't even know what it is. So I didn't know if it was related to this conversation or not. So I wanted to make sure.
It's a newscaster and her mother, and there was a bunch of things that happened, and they found somebody, and then they.
Well, I ain't even trying to explore it if it's not related to Israel. I thought it might be. Yeah, I don't want to explore. I just wanted to make sure if it was related, that's why I brought it up, because I didn't know. Because I'm the moderator, y'all the experts. Like I said, we're missing one side of our one wing is ours. So we're missing our right wing today. All right, let me go ahead and get this. I think I just got one more clip. And again, we're just thoroughly using your knowledge to fully understand what's happening, versus hopefully y'all are getting nuggets that are different than what you're getting in the mainstream media. And it's not just leaning into, personally, I would say from a propaganda standpoint, I don't know if I trust Netanyahu. You know what I mean? Like, that's just a personal thing, I would say. But everything you're giving me gives me more perspective on the geopolitics and, like you said, why our country's hands were tied on it. As much as people may say we don't want to do this or we shouldn't do this, it's not as simple as that. And that's what we're just sharing with y'all. We're not even getting into the right or wrong of it. He's just explaining here's the relationship. And like you said, with the covert stuff, we can look like our hands are clean. And now that we're making the overt stuff, are we going to still show up in alliance? Which again, I do get, and I'm not saying that's right or wrong. We're just talking about the reality of, since the alliance is there, Emil is just breaking down why our hands was tied. We're not saying it's right. We're not saying we're for it. We're not saying we're against it. He's just explaining the why, and that's what we're here for. All right, let's get another clip. Now, this was the best clip I saw.
Most Americans don't know this, so I'll say it just so that people understand. There is no formal alliance between Israel and the United States. It's all just a handshake that we've carried over the last 70 years. Like, I kid you not. So part of this is that Israel's been a staunch ally, a staunch supporter of the United States in the region for many, many years, and therefore we've reciprocated. But because we do not have that formal alliance, there have been times when we've had a strain to our relationship. Israel has been caught spying on the US and vice versa. So there is this very strange sort of friendship that goes on between the US and Israel. But at the end of the day, we're more likely than not as a nation to support Israel because we believe they have been the beacon of what we believe as democracy. Now, I have my own opinions about that, and many others do too. But at the end of the day, the US and Israel's relationship is so strong that people think we have a formal agreement when actually we do not.
Yeah, that is something to note. I know I was reading Ta-Nehisi's Coates' last book, and he makes a reference point to visiting somewhere in Israel, some particular place he was visiting, was allowed to visit, if you will, and there was like some type of Bible verse that was clearly somehow talking about the relation. And I can't do it no justice, but I'll just say this. He was shocked to see this particular Bible verse that said Israel and United States are going to be kind of connected forever or whatever, just because of how, in a sense, how Israel is cleaning up the history of the region to make it look like rightfully so this has always been their land. And, from Ta-Nehisi Coates' viewpoint, he was like, I've seen this before.
There was a time before Israel was a nation where it is now, where it could have been placed in where modern day Uganda, right? So the people of Israel, as we know it today, also had a second potential home because there is a strong Hebrew presence, Jewish presence in Eastern Africa around the space where modern day Uganda is. So before the nation was where it is geographically, there was a choice, and it could have been on the continent of Africa, or it could have been where it is now on the coast of the Mediterranean, which is considered the Holy Land. And so the modern day version of Israel is exactly where it is now because of that choice.
Right, and what I've always thought about that choice, even before I left there, we both graduated from the academy. You were a year ahead of me, but I've always thought about, because that was my area of responsibility, the Middle East, in the 6 years that I was in or whatever, and I've always thought to myself, like, yeah, they're in the back door of that region, and we have these big differences with this region. So I'm not even saying what's right or wrong. I'm like, it's never going to not be a relationship because of where they're located. I would also even offer that Israel got located for all the other countries in addition to us that wanted to have a kind of a, somebody in the back door of their region that represented this side of things. So I think
I'm not gonna argue with that, because that's a really good point to make, that the existence of Israel as it is a creation from coming out of World War II. And that matters to how geopolitics have progressed ever since.
Yeah. So I've always thought that, even before I witnessed this happen again and again, and what they're going to do and what they're not going to do. Y'all stop fighting. And then we're still their friends. Like it seems like a big joke to a degree, but in reality, that's been day one once that area got selected for them. All right, let me play this last clip and get your thoughts. I think this is the most profound of the three from my perspective, but I definitely want to
The
see.
US and Israel are inseparable allies. When the threat from Tehran reached a break.
I did this a second show I've done this. I keep recording. I gotta go get this clip. Give me a few seconds, y'all. Everybody that's watching.
So
I'm gonna actually drag.
I'm just glad that our
page.
watchers, our viewers, they're interested in these conversations, because I think there's so much propaganda that we need to be able to sift through as if we're watching the mainstream media. And it's not so much that the mainstream media is right, wrong, bad, or good, but they have a perspective that you need to know is always sort of present, whether it's the right or the left. That ever-present perspective is often very lopsided. And so the propaganda tends to want to shift toward that narrative or that perspective. So when you see us coming in, we're not just asking questions. We're looking at things historically, or we're looking at things politically in a way that says, is this necessarily the best way to analyze the events that we're witnessing? And for me, the answer is almost always no, because they oversimplify the events. They oversimplify the history. They try to make it a narrative of one side versus the other. Often that's good versus bad, right versus wrong, instead of it being a more nuanced human behavior approach that allows you to see, hey, the Iranians have been trying to come out from under the thumb of a CIA/MI6 campaign that happened 70 years ago, when the prime minister of Iran was elected democratically. His name was Mossadegh. Mossadegh was deposed because people at British Petroleum at the time thought that he would be bad for their oil, because BP had a near monopoly on Iranian oil, and he wanted to nationalize the oil industry and slash their royalties so that he could bring more money back into the country. That instigated a coup that installed someone named the Shah Pahlavi of Iran. And for about 25 years, the nation of Iran was under the Shah, who was a friend of the United States. Here's some interesting point about the Shah. He had built a nuclear program that was almost online before the Iranian Revolution. Some of the world's finest nuclear scientists come out of Iran because of that. Absolutely.
Wow, let me ask you about that. So at that time, was we as a country, or I'm pretty sure Israel was always concerned about that, but at the time that, as you say, he had built one as an ally and a friend of us, right? Because that was just, like, most people don't even know we had a period where we were friendly with Iran, right? So during that period, were we concerned about it? Because I know to a degree, Russia and the United States, have pretty much linked up and said, we're not going to let anybody else have these nuclear weapons. So how was he able to do that as our friend? But when me thinking, or think I understand that Russia and the United States really didn't want anybody else getting nuclear capability around the world once we understood the destruction of nuclear weapons. How did he even pull that off?
So the Shah of Iran was a very close ally of the United States and was a secret ally of Israel. So So there was a handshake under the table between Iran and Israel between the late 50s and the mid 70s. And that little secret handshake, people don't understand that there's a lot more to this conflict than the eyeballs would see. And when the Shah was deposed during the revolution, that's when everybody got nervous about Iran's nuclear ambition. Because now the response to the American coup was to create this problem that the Shah had to crush. And the Shah was hard on crushing the most militant revolutionaries.
So that makes sense. Once he was back. So he was doing our bidding. He's doing our bidding at that point. So of course we're fully behind. But once the revolution gets him taken over, now it's like, oh, all of his stuff is going to fall into the wrong hands.
There you go.
And now we're witnessing it. And we're witnessing ever since that time. That's dope. That's
and we've been worried about a nuclear program ever since, because some of the finest nuclear scientists in the planet come out of Iran. That is remember 5,000 years of history, and education is a big part of that history. So it stands to reason that you've got a culture who wants to, some of the best doctors in the world, some of the best engineers.
Because they, in a sense, as us in Western society, we hear about the Renaissance, but they led the Renaissance of that region that we don't learn about in Western society. That group, that area is basically the most brilliant, like you said, a 5,000 year history versus the United States having a 400-year history. I mean, Europe has a longer history than us. But I'm just kind of giving people the context of, you're absolutely right. That was the Renaissance area that we think of in the Western ideas that we were taught about, the Renaissance of the Europe, if you will. They definitely were, and still are. Like you said, they're still some of the most brilliant people in the world because of it. So sorry to cut you off, but I just wanted to bring that.
It's all good. No, this is the thing that I think our viewers want to hear.
No, absolutely. So let's play this clip right here. This is the last clip, and we'll get a response to this and close this out, man. Thank you for this, man. You're so brilliant at this. But this one right here, I think, again, is the most full. And to your point, let me say this too, because we're not even knocking the clips that we've been playing, because we're in a social media world. So to a degree, you know, the fact that they're doing a short post, they're not going to be able to bring in this extra context. So we're not even pointing them out. It's cool that people are trying to say, hey, here's some more things that are behind this. But to your point, Emil, from a short clip, it doesn't matter how thorough it is, it cannot be thorough enough to give you the big picture. So again, that's partly why we're doing what we're doing. But again, I think this is the most robust one, and it's a little longer than the other clips, but it really breaks down what I think is the entire picture, and back to what Shelley, I mentioned, said at the beginning of this show. It brings in the China factor, but let's go ahead and watch.
Let me tell you something most Americans have not been told clearly. If there were ever a master strategist in modern American statecraft, it had to be President Donald Trump and his administration. Because for them, the central strategic question was always China. When you step back and study the pattern of their actions, pressures and positioning, a very clear logic appears. They understood something fundamental. For the next 100 years of American global leadership, China is the only true challenger. And so their strategy focused on the greatest vulnerability of any industrial superpower: energy. First, Venezuela. By isolating and constraining Venezuelan oil flows, Washington disrupted a major external energy channel that China had spent years cultivating. With now Venezuelan being more American-aligned, Venezuelan oil shipments are firmly under American control. Then, Iran. On the surface, US pressure and strikes on Iran appear nuclear-related, but strategically, it is energy leverage. Because China imports over 10 million barrels of oil per day, and China is the primary buyer of Iran's seaborne oil exports. And nearly 1/5 of global oil supply moves through a single narrow choke point, the Strait of Hormuz, now directly threatened by conflict. And in geopolitics, geography is destiny. Influence over Iran means influence over Hormuz. Now look at the strategic picture Americans rarely see. Venezuelan supply, controlled. Iranian supply, controlled. Middle Eastern flow, monitored and controlled. By overwhelming United States military and naval power. Now imagine China's position if its major external energy lifelines fall under American strategic leverage. Factories feel it. Heavy industry feels it. AI infrastructure feels it. This is pressure without direct war. For Washington, a US-aligned or weakened Iran tightens energy leverage on Beijing without confronting China directly. And history teaches a simple rule. When you control your challenger's supply lines, the duration of their challenge shrinks dramatically. With relatively few moves, this strategy aimed to extend American dominance for generations. One day, historians may write that this was one of the most consequential grand strategies of the 21st century. Stay with Altus World News, because we see what others do not see. God bless America, and God bless the brave men and women who defend her strength.
I'm sorry, bro. I'm sorry. I can't hear you. I don't know. You're muted. You're muted. You're muted, just so you know. But yeah, let me jump in and I got you. I want you to come off of this. So here's some context and the perspective I would like to give, because I definitely want you to give me what you believe about what you just saw. But here's the context that I would like to give and have us think about. In reality, when it comes to politics, just us as the average American and what we have the capacity for, this is the area where we're going to usually know the least. I'm just talking about in general. And this is all around the world. This is not just Americans. For the most part, geopolitics is played on a level that is typically something that you may not know why your country is doing something, right? Like that's the reality, and they may keep it hidden from you on purpose for whatever reason. So I kind of just highlight that to say, and I said this in the very beginning. I remember when we first started doing this show, and it was right before President Trump won the inauguration and won the presidency. And when he would come in, there would be, what's up with Greenland? And then one time we were asking about, he wants to take over the Panama Canal, and we're like, what? Or whatever. But it's always been this underlying thought about what China is doing and how much control they had of what was happening at the Panama Canal. And then when the Venezuela situation took everybody by surprise, and Shelley said, well, I get it from the standpoint of being worried about China. And that's not the context that we're looking in, because we saw what happened with the so-called drug boats. It was hardly any drugs come from Venezuela to the United States, right? So that ended up being, in a sense, the focus in the media. But Shelley mentions, hey, if there is a concern about China, again, and then now I see this guy. And then we've played another cut before talking about, to a degree, how well President Trump is playing for the long term. And this is just me. This cut sounds like there's a long-term geopolitical play that we as average Americans are not going to understand. So that's how I see, for all the things that I detest about what's getting done currently by this administration, this is the one area that seems like they might know what they're doing. You're not going to get everything right, even when you know what you're doing. But that guy says, hey, the 100-year play is this play. And you may look back on this time and see this play as something smart that actually made sure we were not having to compete with China, who is now leveraging themselves to become our competing superpower, because Russia has not really been that in any other area except for militarily for years now. Your thoughts, brother?
So it's interesting because let's go over some quick numbers. Iran's output was about 90% going to China, right? So that's a huge part of China's import of oil. Venezuela, about half of Venezuela's output went to China. So China imports about 2/3 of its need for oil every day. And it's also, by the way, the fastest growing adopter of alternative energy, solar, wind, etc. Right? So they know that oil is a strategic lever for them, and they're doing everything they can to prevent it. So they're drilling, they have near record production in their own domestic oil production. They're moving toward alternative energy as fast as possible. One of the reasons why China's a leader in electric vehicles is because they're trying to get off of the oil tit as much as possible. So when you start adding all this up, you have America, who just hamstrung Venezuela. We're hamstringing Iran. Why? Because China has a near monopoly on rare earth metals. So there needs to be a strategic lever that counters that. So you want to play? We'll play. This is the game that they're playing. It's absolutely realpolitik. It's what that's when you just play the game for what it is. You don't worry about morals, ethics, values. You worry about that guy over there has got a lever over me. I got to figure out how to get a lever over him. And Iran and Venezuela are absolutely those levers. So in addition to all the things we've already talked about, if you put China in the mix, China's got ambitions in the South Pacific. It's got ambitions on Taiwan. It's going to be a regional peer, if not a full-on peer worldwide. But China's smart enough to know you don't fight America kinetically, you fight America economically. You fight America in all the other ways you can, because if you try to go toe-to-toe with America, we've proven over and over again we're a formidable force kinetically, right? That is using weapons of war. So what do? You figure out how to gain a lever over America using other things. And right now, rare earths is one of those levers. It's not the only one, but it's one of the big ones. So our response to that is to create a lever through oil. Right now, China has been stockpiling oil since the pandemic, stockpiling oil like nobody's business. They have increased their capacity to store oil and the amount of oil they're storing to the point where they can go about 4 months without any imports whatsoever.
Wow.
Right? That is an insane amount of oil that they've stored because they know oil is a strategic lever for them and they don't want to be under anyone's thumb. So they're doing all they can to get out from under it. So you're seeing all of this play out simultaneously. And so this chess game, this is what is called in the strategic circles grand strategy. This grand strategy is we think China is not a good influence in the world and that it does not present the kind of economic and political opportunity that America can present to nations around the world. So China has been going like gangbusters in Africa and Latin America, trying to show that, hey, work with us. We can help you be the kind of country you want to be. America's like, wait, we had prior to the first Trump administration, we had some very specific things we wanted to see out of a nation before we said we would help them. And those nations, when they saw the alternative from China, they don't try to get us to do anything. They just want a reason. They don't care about how we cover. So that was a very appealing lever that China offered to those countries that were growing. So you had this go on. Then Trump was like, well, forget that. If they're not going to play by the rules, why should I play by those rules? I'm out. So the game that we're seeing play out is called realpolitik. And that is when you go toe to toe with somebody and you don't really care about ethics, values, and morals. You care about, I can't let them gain a lever over me without getting one over them.
And so, yeah, like I say, this is the one area where maybe whatever his history has been in business, he shows and proves in this one area, just calling it what it is. Whereas the propaganda from the news media, we're raving and ranting and raving about something the game really ain't even it. And so thank you for, again, a thorough explanation, because that's why I particularly called this show We Explain Why, because of you.
I appreciate that.
Because typically our show is based on what are we seeing, here's what we think it is, here's what's propaganda, here's what's not. And I was like, all right, I'm not going to have the left and right wing today to talk about it from both sides per se, but based on who you are, Emil, I was like, you know what? Nobody's going to get a better explanation for why we're in the run better than Emil. So I really focused and named the show that, because I said I could do this show in a way that, again, what is our ultimate goal on this show? To raise the consciousness of those in our community about politics and how it matters to you. So with that said, I didn't even do a regular intro for the show. I actually played a video for an upcoming event. So we're going to actually, for those out there, I'm in Atlanta. We're actually bringing Emil into town March 19th for a 2-day event. We're basically, for those who know about me with Mental Dialogue and Engage Futures, which is our brother Leo Smith's company, we're basically putting together a politically conscious event where we're bringing Emil into town. And on March the 19th, we're going to actually talk about a Black agenda that we're going to actually try to build with Black conservatives and Black liberals. Like, literally get them in the room and find out things that should be on the Black agenda for us as African-American constituents in this country. And then next night, I'll have my regular event, the Mental Dialogue Live Experience, and we're going to talk about why my one singular Black vote matters. Most of us are just participating, not understanding how our actual vote matters. So we're going to have a 2-day, one day a think tank, the second day more grassroots. So Emil, look forward to seeing you on March the 19th. And we're going to close out with the video of how those of you out there, if you're in Atlanta, want to join us on March 19th and March 20th, or either one or the other, this video will tell you how to do that. I look forward to seeing you. We'll have some more shows before then, but this is our first promotions for our event, March the 19th. Thank you, brother, for your time. Have a wonderful day, and we're going to close out with this video.
If you're tired of the propaganda, listen to us. The Politically Conscious Podcast is going live for a powerful 2-day event. Day 1, 7 p.m., Thursday, March 19th, at the Gym Event Center. We're building a real black agenda. No slogans, no political theater, just strategy. What do we want and how do we win it? Day 2, 7 p.m., Friday, March 20th, at Urban Grind. We ask the question everybody's thinking: does my black vote matter? Are we getting results or just participation? 2 nights, 2 locations, 1 mission, power and accountability. Donation-based entries, free parking available. Search Politically Conscious on Eventbrite.com for tickets. Details at mentaldialogue.com.
We already got some tickets sold too.
I can't wait.
We already got people getting the. I mean, I shouldn't even say sold because the first night is free. So y'all just have to RSVP on Eventbrite. So go to Eventbrite, look up Politically Conscious if you're in Atlanta, and join us. But I can't wait to see you, Emil. Appreciate you, brother.
Always been my pleasure. Take care, brother.
Yeah. Great show today. I knew you would kill it.
If you're tired of the propaganda,
hey, listen to us, baby.